All right, we're live from the Global Podcast Studios here in Atlanta. Rich Casanova here alongside Dewayne Hart. Dewayne Hart is the guest of the hour. He's our subject matter expert on everything cybersecurity. He hosts his own podcast. He's written a book on the subject matter. He is the, if you need to know or want to know, this is the guy you got to talk to. And we're going to talk to him right now. Welcome to the show, Dewayne.
Hey, I'm back again here. Right here with Rich Casanova. We are becoming a brand, maybe one day on Hart.
Yeah.
Talking about cybersecurity.
Yeah, we'll maybe take it on the road show. We'll be keynote speakers, all that good stuff. But I'll just introduce you on the stage. You take it from there, yeah. So we're talking cybersecurity once again, and we mentioned he has the cybersecurity podcast as well as his book, and you can check everything out at DewayneHart.com. But today's topic is very interesting, actually, because we've talked about, obviously cybersecurity in terms of B2B, business to business. If you whether it's a startup or a billion-dollar brand, it's got to be on your mind. It should be on your checklist of things to do and not do. And one of those should be cybersecurity. We've talked about the internal implications of that, right? Within your own organization. We've talked about employee. Today, we're going to be talking about the third-party vendor. So before we jump into that, what are some examples of some vendors that businesses typically work with?
Okay. Vendors, businesses. Think about the vendors that have to collect data.
Right.
Okay. Maybe cloud service providers. Think about the vendors that have to come onto your site and to install equipment. Okay.
Right.
So those are your third party sources. Even if you want to take it deeper, think about organizations like Walmart.
Right.
And think about the merchants, right?
Right.
The credit card companies.
Yeah, the processing, yeah.
Visa and MasterCard.
Right. And it could be at your office or your business. It could be, we think in terms of maybe just the Wi-Fi or the internet connection. But these days, most all of technology is somehow connected to the web. I mean, even your copy machine would, right? Your security cameras, the way if you're hosting an event, the way you're registering people on event, you're using a third-party vendor, right? A third-party vendor can be social media, we've talked about in the past, but it can be your telephone provider, your systems, right?
Yes.
And the concern there is that in order to interact with the third party, you have to share data. So what's the upside and what's the challenges, and what are some things you should look out for when you're sharing data like that across those platforms?
Rich, I could take 3 hours to talk about that, but I'm going to sit here for a couple of minutes and talk about it. It's about information sharing and trying to establish a trusted relationship. Because before anyone begins to share information with an outside source, you always have to have a trusted relationship. And that trust relationship is built upon agreements.
Right.
There are certain things such as a service level agreement, operational level agreement, and also a privacy level agreement.
Okay. Those
are really three of the basic type of agreements that you have to have in place, because let's just imagine that one of us was to give information to a third party source, right? We need to make sure that they protect that data with the same interest as we would.
Right.
Now to make sure that all the controls are in place and the standards are being practiced, we would have to put agreements in place.
Okay.
Right? Because the risk behind that is that I would have customers.
Right.
And I have a third party source that needs to have access to that information.
Right.
Now if something goes wrong, I can't sit here and say, I gave it to company
right.
A. Okay. No.
Yeah.
I am ultimately held responsible, because this is one of the problems that I think a lot of organizations face, is that they give their environment away to their vendors. Okay. But you still have to maintain a vigilant look, and you have to have that 360 degrees of security visibility.
Right. Yeah, because at the end of the day, it's on you. There was a president that said the buck stops here, right?
Right.
So I'm thinking about some, applications as a consumer that you might experience, right? You check into a hotel, they can't release, your when somebody walks in, they can't say, well, Dewayne Hart is in room 314, right? Mm-hmm. That's protected information. And you think about your security cameras also, not just cybersecurity, but the security that's monitoring your premises, your equipment, your employees. That's a third party vendor, right? So you've got to do your research and your due diligence to make sure that it's almost like they're another employee. You're trusting your employee with the information. You're also trusting these vendors with that same information.
Right. See, now here's the disconnection. I call it the transitional knowledge, all right? The same way that we practice the protection of our homes, cars, and keys.
Right.
All we have to do is to transition that knowledge into cybersecurity. Back about 5 or 6 years ago, Target had a data breach.
Yeah.
And upon research, it was found out that a vendor just came through the door and stated, I need to work on your network equipment.
Uh-oh.
And someone said, oh, yes.
Yeah.
It goes to the network closet.
Right.
Person goes back there and start the work. And what happened was that the person released data through their computers or something like that, right? So, let's just step back for a minute. Here's the control process.
Right.
Before that person came to Target, should have been a list with their name, ID.
Right.
Okay. Should have been someone that works at Target that follows them around.
Monitoring that, yeah.
Monitoring them. See, now, when someone comes in your house, you just don't let them wander around.
Right, right, exactly, yeah.
Okay? If you can have them to sit out in the backyard, then you'll go make it work.
Right.
Now, back to the topic here. Think about just something as simple as somebody walking into a building, right, and starting to work.
Right.
Because you have to have those agreements in place to say that if you're going to come into my building, you are going to be escorted by my employee. You're going to have to send me the name of your employee that is coming over and give me a full scope of work that needs to be accomplished.
Right. And verify that their background's been checked and so forth, right?
You know what? That's your cybersecurity mindset.
Kicking in, yeah.
It's kicking in.
Exactly, yeah. Because also you just think about, now you mentioned these contracts or agreements, right? So how, is that something what's the update cycle on those? I mean, are those typically a 1 year, term kind of situation, or you review them as needed?
You know what? Every organization is different.
Yeah.
Most organizations will go review them once a year.
Right.
And most organizations only build them upon a business type of relationship. Let's say if the business relationship is only for 3 months,
mm-hmm.
Well, that is the life term for that service level agreement that you have in place. Now, it depends on the company and it depends on the type of business relationship that you have in place. But it makes great sense to do a review if you are pretty much, have a business engagement for 1 year, because what you want to do is that you want to do your own homework.
Right.
Because, see, you want to put in that service level agreement that every 2 months, you're going to have to send me your auditing reports.
Right.
You're going to have to show me signs that you have this level of security in your data centers. But as a company, you need to review that service level agreement by actually making sure that, one, that is being followed, and two, is that if you need to make any changes, then, well, you need to make those changes, because you don't want to wait until the end of the contract period. Right. And try to make a change to it and say, well, you did not follow this standard policy here. Well, you should have told me this about 6 months ago.
Right.
Okay. So makes common sense, right. Even a privacy level agreement. Okay. Privacy is about data and information. And see, you have to have a privacy level agreement in place, because if you don't, you could find yourself in the courtroom.
Now, we were referencing an article a little bit earlier before the show, and one of the topics was managing procurement risk. And I thought there was an interesting statement here. It says, the rule of thumb for managing supply chain cybersecurity is that if it touches the network, it's in the scope of risk management.
Yes, it is.
Right?
It is. It's you. Once you step into the fire,
right? Yeah,
that's it.
Yeah, all bets are off, and it's like, and what about if we flip this around and talk about the mitigating from the vendor standpoint? Is there anything a vendor should be concerned about? Is there any red flags of like, because you're cross-pollinating this data, right? So is the company kind of tapping into your network as a vendor? And is there anything that like, this is a company that maybe that is they're not doing their due diligence as the company, and it could risk our reputation as a vendor?
Well, number one is this. When you have a type of agreement in place, if you agree to it,
right?
Okay, so you have to follow it. All right, so that's from the top. Now, so much as a vendor, what you need to be concerned about is that, can you go do the work?
Right.
Yeah. Can you adhere to the policies? Okay, because as a vendor, you're going to be required to protect information.
Right.
So if you don't have if you don't have types of controls in place, like some isolation, where you can isolate traffic, where you have database servers that are protected and only authorized people can go have access to the databases. If it's public facing information, you need to find out the sensitivity of that data before you put it out there, because if it's sensitive and critical, then if in the SLA somewhere, it states that you were not supposed to put the data out to the public, then you could find yourself in the courtroom.
Yeah, kind of what's the boundaries here, right? Yeah. And a lot of times we look at an agreement and it looks, it's drawn up by lawyers and it seems like a standard, document. But I think from the vendor standpoint, you might be cognizant of, repercussions. In other words, if there is a data breach, what's the implication to the vendor? Is that going to put the vendor out of business? Because like you mentioned the Target situation, that costs them multiples and multiples of millions of dollars, right? Yeah. To rectify that, get that, and then build the trust back with the customer as well, right?
Well,
but back to that vendor question is that, and on both parties, so if there is a data breach, what's the financial impact of that? And if you don't maybe read the contract, it might put you out of business.
That's why you go out and buy insurance.
Right. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. You can. Organization now can buy insurance just for those.
Really, for cybersecurity.
Yes.
Breaches.
Yes. Those just for those particular situations, just to protect you now. Yeah. Because you never have knowledge of the unknown. Okay?
Right. Yeah.
So, but it's safe to have the insurance, especially with data. And I can say for sure that the federal government now has a supply chain risk management program that is definitely growing. If you're a government contracting company, there are certain type of parameters and rules and regulations that you have to follow as well. The only way to make it operate is to just make sure that each side has a standard and make sure those standards are being followed. Okay. That kind of shapes it, where you can put certain type of security controls in place and you can mitigate issues, because if you're a vendor, as you said before,
right,
like your reputation is on the line.
Right. And I was also thinking the implications of, if there is that data breach, of not only the fines with the insurance, but I think the insurance, most like any other insurance, is going to still come back at you and say, did you have all the checks and balances in place that was possible to prevent this?
Well,
right? Because if you're asleep at the wheel and you really didn't update your agreement, you didn't anticipate things, they could potentially say, well, you know what, there's a clause in here that says some of this is on you.
Well,
right?
It goes back to protocols.
Right.
Are you following the correct protocol?
I mean, like that example of the person that you let into your back office in your store, right? The insurance, it's not a blanket insurance. Like insurance is great to protect you, but like here at the podcast studio, if we leave our doors unlocked and the door wide open and somebody steals all the equipment, it's probably not going to be covered by insurance because you didn't take a reasonable amount of onus on your end, right?
Right. See. Now this is the mindset that actually has to be in place. All right. Take care of others' possession as you would your own.
Right.
See, that's simple.
Right.
Okay. So that means that if you employ a cybersecurity mindset where you're thinking holistically, where you look at the entire picture of cybersecurity, and if you have that risk-based thinking in place, okay, and you understand that risk means that you need to look at the entire picture because it's not about you, because it's about the customer as well.
Right.
So as a third-party vendor, then you're going to be concerned about making sure that you maintain those great relationships, because when you do, that's where that value proposition mentality comes to surface, and you become a high-value asset, and no one really wants you to go because you're such a great client to work with. But as I said before, protocols. Follow the protocols. Follow the rules and regulations, policies.
Yeah, and some of those points you just hit on kind of dovetails into your, you recorded, you had another live episode on your live stream earlier today, right, on YouTube. And a lot of that was about certification, job opportunities, the industry really growing leaps and bounds. And that kind of begs the question, within a certain organization, I imagine there's almost a new title or position. It would have to be a decent sized company. But within that organization, correct me if I'm wrong, there's probably a dedicated officer or role just to oversee vendor agreements in terms of cybersecurity, not just negotiating, the terms of the agreement, but is there a level where this person oversees all those checks and balances and reviews maybe on a daily or weekly basis, just monitors, to prevent those, but more of a proactive approach to data breaches, right?
Oh, yes. Large organizations have privacy officers and some information security risk managers that are so concerned about making sure that the standards in place. But you can think of it as auditing too.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Auditing. Now speaking of certifications, some of the vendors will go require your system to be certified at a certain level.
Yeah.
Okay. So
and vice versa.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Because because when you're certified, see, that means that everybody meets the same level of compliance. Because if a vendor wants to do business with company A, and company A want to do business with like company, vendor A, both of them must have the same level of certifications in place. Because in order to meet the requirements of the customer, then the vendor has to have the same type of requirements in place.
Right.
It's a match for match. Right?
Yeah.
So if both companies are practicing the same standards and carries the same level of certification, then it kind of makes the job easy.
Oh yeah.
All right.
It's all about expectations, right?
Yes.
And matching those, right? Mm-hmm. So, and then as a business, you've got to shop what's reasonable budget-wise, and can they meet those demands, and also kind of grow with you as a business. We talked about, reviewing those contracts or those agreements, because technology changes, in light and warp speed these days, right? So what was in place, last year or 6 months ago, I mean, probably it's reasonable every 6 months to review, or
I cannot sit here and say when it's supposed to be reviewed, but I would say that as frequent as possible. There are some organizations that are very stringent because they have so many suppliers, and I guarantee you that they're probably watching SLAs on a monthly basis and on a weekly basis, because you may have over 300 to 500 suppliers. So you have to keep a vigilant look on those suppliers. See, now See, now this is where the adaptive mindset comes to surface. That last chapter in the cybersecurity mindset talks about having a constant engagement into cybersecurity,
right?
So you can maintain your availability and your resilience. This is where chapter 20 is surfacing now,
right?
Because once you figure out everything you need to do to actually get the cybersecurity mindset to work, the last chapter is sustainability, as to making sure that the train is still moving.
Right.
Okay. But in order for that train to still moving, then you're going to have to be vigilant, and you have to keep your eyes open and have that 360 degrees of security visibility in place, because you just can't become lapsed because someone else is taking over the work.
Right.
And also, too, you can't become lapsed because it's somebody else's data.
Right. Yeah.
Okay. Because you have to treat that data as you would your own company so that you can stay protected.
Yeah, almost as if they're not in the mix, because to the consumer, to your customer, they don't care about that third party, right? It's I'm doing business with you,
right,
not with the vendor, right? It's your responsibility to make sure that my data is protected or that transaction is secure, right?
I think that in so many ways, Rich, I think over the past couple of years, I think the cybersecurity industry has gotten better with this, because the more people talk, the more people listen.
Right.
Okay. So having a conversation about vendor and supplier management has been at the surface a lot for like the past 5 years, I would say.
Right.
Okay. When I first started IT and coming on through maybe 7 years ago, it wasn't even a hard topic.
Right. Right.
And now it's a hard topic because information is being shared. And then too, you have customers.
Right.
And you do not want to lose your customer base. So you have to maintain a certain type of compliance because your reputation is on the line.
Yeah, you took the words right out of my mouth, because we talked about the vendor reputation, right? Exactly. But it's that business, as a consumer, if word gets out that, things are not on the up and up with that business, it's a long haul to build that trust back, right? It's just one mistake can cause a ripple effect that can really implement your business. Dewayne, we're almost out of time. Unless there's any other points you want to hit on, I think this is a good point to kind of potentially wrap it up. And any closing comments, and we'll mention a call to action for our listeners as well. But in terms of next steps, this is a quote I read from an article that sums up an angle we talked about, but it says, no amount of technology and best practice will be sufficient if employees are not committed to the program, right? It goes back to that mindset and that hacker's hat. So, we talked about maybe in an organization, you have a dedicated officer just overseeing vendor security, but like you open the show with that illustration that we can visualize. This person walks into a business and say, I need to, check into the network, right? The employee needs to have that mindset of like, wait a second, hold on, buddy, hold on. I have to get my manager, just instead of just giving them a carte blanche to do what they want.
Hey, part of that cybersecurity mindset, chapter 1.
Exactly, right? Literally and figuratively, chapter 1 in the book and chapter 1 in real life practice.
It's called the inclusive culture.
Yeah.
Okay. When you go build a culture that is very inclusive, people will have a defensive mindset.
Right.
Okay. They will become a human firewall.
Right.
Okay. Now, a human firewall is not a person that's standing up with a fire stick.
Yeah.
Okay. It's just a methodology that says that people are thinking defensively.
Right.
Okay. That's how you start things off, is to have that culture and your people on board where they can think defensively.
Right.
When you build that, that's when everything else happens, as far as the situation awareness, the risk-based thinking, and
right.
also the hacker's mindset.
Right.
Which is your favorite
it
term
is, whatever,
like
yeah.
to use.
Exactly. One day we're going to literally have the hat or whatever, in the studio. Yeah, you gotta get some merch that has hacker's hat on there. So, lots more to talk about, but I think we're out of time here. So, unless there's any, final thoughts, we want to do a call to action here in a second.
Hey,
I mean, how would you summarize this for, that business and that vendor?
all right. Make sure that you agree to the terms.
Okay.
Make sure that you know what you need done of your vendors. And if you're a vendor, make sure that you can do the work.
Right.
Okay?
Exactly. You can deliver that. Yeah.
Yeah. Make sure you can do it. It's all fairness to like both sides, because at the end of the day, we are only as safe as our mindset.
Yep. Well said. And you can quote the guy on that one there. So Dewayne Hart, pleasure having you once again in the studio here on the Global Podcast Studio Network and here in Atlanta. And again, check out for everything for Dewayne's book, for his podcast, for his live stream, for his home address. No. That's a little cybersecurity humor there, yeah. But no, for everything to follow up and for more information, it's just DewayneHart.com. Again, DewayneHart.com. And we'll see you on the next episode and tune into his podcast.